I'm Chris.
I'm Sandy.
And this is Parenting Autism. Here we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 144 of the Parenting Autism Podcast. We appreciate you listening, and today we're going to start a series of answering the most common questions parents have about autism. So, among other things, we're going to catch up on where we've been for the last month and what's happening with us. So, welcome, and I have Sandy here, as always. And
Here I am.
there you are. And how would you like to start today?
I would like to, let's do the recap from the last month.
Okay.
We'll hit all those highlights and then we'll roll into the discussion of the question that you put down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's go with plan A.
All right, sounds good. So since we've been on this past month, we had Bryce's Special Olympics gymnastics state competition. And he did really well in so many ways. He performed well, which we were excited for him because his routines did not come easy to him, and they had moved him up to a more difficult level. And so he practiced really hard. He was a little nervous about it, and he got 3 gold medals, a silver and a bronze. Mm-hmm. And the biggest surprise was that he got a gold medal for the best all around. And that's where they tally up all your scores from the 4 different routines that he did. And he had got a 9.7 on one of them on the pommel horse. And I think that super high score was enough that it moved him ahead, that he actually got first place all around. So it was a surprise to him. It was a surprise to all of us. And I think the most important thing was that Bryce handled himself so well with the other athletes, and he shook hands with his teammate, or these young men that he didn't even know because they weren't from our county. But, he connected with them and shook hands and talked to them. And it was just really great. So I wasn't able to go because of my immune system. But you, Chris, you went and you sent me videos, and I appreciate all of that. So I think I got the gist of how it all went down, and I was really happy. And Bryce was super, super excited.
Yeah, he did really well in the competition. And like you said, even if he didn't get first place, he would shake the other athlete's hand. And, he was, while they were waiting to go up on the air quote stage to receive their medals, he would be talking to the other athletes. And it was just good to see him socializing by himself, conducting himself in a manner that, was good, that, there were no meltdowns, there were no outbursts. I mean, he handled himself really well. He
did. And I know he had, some worries and anxiety about how he would do and how he would score. And Bryce is very aware of the difference between a gold medal, a silver medal, and a bronze medal, and no medal for that point. And so, he's very competitive, and he wants to do his best, and he wants to receive the best. But, Special Olympics is all about you do your best, but if you don't win, you still have a good attitude about all of that.
I think 2 things can attribute to him being, I don't want to say better mannered, but being better equipped to handle situations where he's not in control, right?
Okay.
And one of those is the cognitive behavior therapy that he's been receiving. So this lady, Sophia, she's helping him with his worries, right? So if he's worried about losing or worried about not passing a test, she gives him the right perspective on how to look at things and how, maybe some tools that he can use to help cope in those situations, like screaming babies or, that's really annoying to him. So she's given him tools. And, on a side note, I'll just bring it up now that this week, he's been seeing this lady weekly. And this week I said, what are we going to talk about with Miss Sophia? And he says, well, I don't have any worries this week. He says, I don't know about next week. So he's like worried about next week.
I know.
But he says, I don't have anything. And I said, okay, well, let's go tell her that, and see what she says. So we went and told her, and she was thrilled. And we said, okay, well, let's do every other week then. And if something comes up in between, she can squeeze us in, and Bryce can talk about it. But I will say that I can tell that having her as a tool in our arsenal is very comforting for Bryce.
Yes.
So you parents out there, if it's different for him talking to her than it is to us, because it's a different relationship, and it's something that he can look forward to and gather in his mind what he wants to talk about when he sees her. So it's almost like an outlet for him, where maybe he feels differently when he tells us things, or we're the disciplinarians, so we're looked at different. We're the parents, so it's not like we go around disciplining them all the time, but it's just a different relationship. And that is a good tool, right?
Yeah.
I see you laughing over there.
Well, I'm laughing at the disciplinarian part.
Yeah.
I know what you're saying.
We're looked at differently.
But even when we meet with her, it's not like he's in there and we're not. And so he can talk more freely that way, because I'm in the room every time that he talks to her.
Yeah.
Because normally it's me that takes him. And he looks at me like...
He does. He looks at me too.
Right.
Why
So that's
do
what I'm
that?
saying. He looks at me like, what should I say? Is it okay to say this? I feel like he's looking almost for my approval or support.
Yeah.
Because he's nervous to tell her stuff, but he wants to tell her stuff. So I just feel like he knows she's a professional, and he just understands the difference between professional versus parent.
Yeah.
Not that this is a safe place and I can't tell mom and dad. It's just,
Right.
no, she's the one that, because I tell him, she's the one who studies this stuff. She's went to school to help you. I can help you in lots of ways, but I haven't studied what she has.
Right.
And has tools that I don't have, and it helps me to know how to help you. So I think that's really the perspective I take, from a parent's perspective as to how this has benefited him.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I think the other thing is that the other thing that's helped him is us going through the Bible with him, because we view the Bible as the ultimate instruction manual for life, right? So Bryce and we've been reading Proverbs at night before he goes to bed, and there's a lot of wisdom in Proverbs, and there's a lot of wisdom about be slow to anger. There's wisdom about patience.
Right.
And he values the Bible so much that he is taking that into consideration in his life, like everything.
He's using it as a guide.
Yes,
as he should.
He's using it as a guide. So when he reads it, or I read to him, he really puts a lot of weight on that. And I think, just all of those things put together right now, as well as he's maturing too.
Right.
I think that has something to do with it. But all around, he's just doing better.
He's in a really...
He's in a good
great
place.
Yeah, he's in a really good place right now. In fact, for Thanksgiving, our niece Haley was there, and she hadn't seen him in person for a little while, and definitely not in any length of time. But she said, "Hey, Bryce is doing so great, and socially especially. And she goes, it's visible. There's it's visibly noticeable that, if I'm saying that right, that you can really see and hear the difference. And we did go someplace different for Thanksgiving this year, because we just changed it up, having lost my dad. And so we went to my brother's in-laws family. And so it was really nice, and there were a lot more people there. And so we weren't sure how Bryce would do, especially because we told him there would be some littles there, because there were several babies and toddlers there. And so we had prepped him for that, never knowing how that's going to go. But instead, he was like, he called them the little kids. And then there was another little boy who's just a couple years younger than Bryce, and he called him the big kid. And then he'd like, where's the big kid? I want to go play with the big kid. And I'm like, okay, he has a name. His name is Tristan. Repeat, Tristan. It's Tristan. Okay, now where's Tristan? And, and he got that. But it's like he saw himself being able to kind of be like the more mature one, because we will tell him, you're 12 now, Bryce, and we'll point out some things that he should be doing differently now that he's growing older. And he wanted to be helpful to the little kids, as he called them. No problems with the noises and the crying. He's not having to wear his headphones. It's like he's really overcome that.
That's true. He hasn't been wearing his headphones as much.
He doesn't wear them to therapy now, because he's overcome that fear that he was carrying there, that kids were going to scream and that they were trying to hurt him. He understands now nobody was trying to hurt him. And so we actually received a text message to both of us last week from the manager at the therapy place where he goes. And she's like, I just have to share with you what happened today, and that Bryce is doing so amazing. And there was a little kid, as he would say, that was crying. And Bryce, instead of being angry or upset or trying to run and hide, he instead said, maybe you can sing the ABC song to him, and that will help calm him down, because it had worked the week before. And so Bryce was just full of compassion, and she said they did sing the song, and the little boy did calm down, and then Bryce was all proud of himself that his suggestion worked. And he would not have told us that. We would not have known that. When I tried to even ask him later, I got nothing. So we're thankful, that Miss Tara sent that to us so that we would know what's going on. But, he's just been extra bubbly, extra outgoing, and just so sweet and kind. And then when his other therapist brought him out to the car this week, and she's like, he's just such a great kid, and he's such a rock star, and he's helping the other kids. And there's another boy who goes there who is Bryce's age, so he's around 11 or 12, and he was having a hard day, and Bryce could hear him having a hard time. And she said Bryce was distracted and finally said, can I go help him? And so Bryce went in, and she said Bryce was like, the peace whisperer. He was able to just help the boy calm down, and then he focused, and they worked together. And these are the great things that we're seeing in Bryce right now, and it's really awesome.
We probably talked about this on the last episode, but we did increase his dosage of leucovorin after our last autism doctor visit, and we've seen a visible difference in his socialization and his happiness and just general disposition. He's just so things are really good there, and we're thankful.
Yes. And as parents out there who are listening, when your kid's in a good spot, it sure helps life go a lot better. It helps
the whole dynamic.
Yeah. So we're enjoying that part of the mountain right now, because we got other stuff going on in the valley, but Bryce is good, and he's super excited about Christmas, and we did take him to see Santa, and he's very excited about that. And so, what else did we do? The hot rod show. You want to talk about that you took him to his first time that he really understood a big car show, I think.
Yeah, well, let's, Bryce is 12. Let's just quickly mention what he asked Santa for.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So Santa, he asked, okay, so it's kind of funny. So he was trying to think what he wanted, and then he's like, well, no, I can't. Well, what is it, Bryce? What do you want? So anyway, he hemmed and hawed, and finally he says, he wanted a Nerf gun. So we're like, okay. He goes, but it won't hurt anybody. It's okay. I'm like, okay, that'll be fine. But where are you going to shoot it? You can't shoot it in the house. And, but we figured out, okay, if he asked for the gun and then he asked for targets, so that way he has targets to aim at in the backyard. And that will be how we set it up. And then we've always told Bryce since he was little that he can have 3 requests for Santa because we wanted to have enough kids and toys for all the kids, right? Mm-hmm. So his third one, he likes to have a surprise. And so they got the gun, the targets, and then a surprise. Mm-hmm. And that's what he asked for. So this was this Santa that we go see every year that's about an hour from our house. And we take Michael and Santa goes down to Palm Beach. And so anyway, Santa was up in our neighborhood this week because Bryce had Shop with a Cop, which is a local thing that our Port St. Lucie police do for kids, which is wonderful. And Bryce gets to shop with a police officer, and he has like $100 budget to buy things. And he was looking at those guns, and I'm like, you already asked Santa for the gun, so I don't think you want to get one here. You got to trust. You got to trust that the elves are doing their job. So he's like, you're right. I need to do that. Okay, I won't worry. Then he goes, but I don't know. I don't know if I told Santa about the scope. I said, well, I think you did. And he says, I don't know. Did I tell him about that? It's really important I have the scope. So I said, well, we can write him a letter if you want. And he's like, well, and I said, I tell you what, Bryce, let's trust that you're going to get that with the scope. But if not, I'll buy you another one with the scope. Okay, that'll work. So then we saw Santa in Walmart at the front of the store. So he went over and I said, well, do you want to tell him? He goes, yes. So he goes over and he just says to Santa, hi, yeah, I need the scope. And Santa just looks at me. He's like, oh, okay. And Bryce, I said, tell him what the scope is for the Nerf gun that I told you about when I saw you a few weeks ago. He says, oh, yes, okay. It's not a problem. We can make that change. He says, okay. So then Bryce was all excited about that.
He even told me after he got home. Yeah, I told Santa.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if he knew, but I told him.
So I think no worries there, and it will have a scope. So yeah, he's pretty excited about that. Good. But it is cute.
Yeah. So anyway, back to the car show.
Yeah.
So every year Daytona Speedway has a car show. It's called the Turkey Rod Run. And I go... From time to time, I go up there, and it's fun for me. So I showed Bryce a video of some of the cars, and so I think must have been the first time he saw a supercharger, and he's like, "Wow, those engines are huge!" And I said, "Well, you want to go with me?" "Yeah, I really want to go." And then I wasn't sure if he was just saying that or he really wanted to go,
Although he seemed extremely excited.
Yeah, so over the following hours and days, he kept mentioning it. Oh, I can't wait to go to this car show.
He says, it's going to be the best day of my life. I said, really? And then I said, better than when you went to New York? Well, not the best day of my life, but it's going to be a good one. I said, yeah, it'll be a good one.
That's right. So we went up there and... it was a little chilly, but we were pretty prepared, although we were still wearing shorts. But we walked around, and I had brought us lunch because I knew that all the vendors there, when lunchtime comes, the lines are really long. So I didn't want to wait in a long line because my feet and, a multitude of reasons. So anyway, we walked through, and we I don't think we got breakfast or we had breakfast. So we kind of ate our lunch for breakfast, and he says, "Okay, so we got there at 7:30, and the gate opened at 8." And then
because he wanted to watch the cars drive in.
Yeah,
that was a big request of his.
So we left home at 5:30 in the morning to go there. And luckily enough, we got there just as the cars were pulling in.
I'm glad, because that was a big deal for him.
So he was very excited that I put it on the YouTube channel if anybody wants to see it. So, so yeah, he's really excited about that. And then late morning, he's like, "Okay, so are we done?" I'm like, "Oh no," I said, "We haven't seen all the stuff." And he's like, "Oh well, okay." So I told him, I said, I told you it was going to be like the air show where we're there all day. We're walking around, and he's like, "Oh, okay." He's like, "Well, can we take a break? And can we go back to the truck?" And I'm like, "Well, the truck was like a half a mile away." So, I said, we can, but it's a long walk. And he's like, "Oh, well, that's okay. So I really think he just needed a break. And so we did. We went back to the truck, and we hung out for a half hour, 45 minutes. And then we went back in the show, and we saw some more cool things like the Krispy Kreme bus, that was very interesting. Everything was Krispy Kreme into it. It's like an old Krispy Kreme tour bus or something. I don't know. And then we saw some other interesting things. And so, including a Cybertruck. So when we came back in, that's when we discovered there was a Cybertruck there. And he was all over that. And the guy was so gracious with letting people sit in it, because he had never sit in one before, and that was a big deal.
Yeah.
So
when I saw that picture that you sent me, I'm like, well, there was the price. That was worth the price of admission for Bryce right there.
And so the guy was talking to him. He's like, "So when you grow up, are you gonna get one?" And he's like, "Oh no, I would never buy a Cybertruck." And the guy looked perplexed because Bryce loved the truck so much. And he's like, "Oh, because, we don't have electricity where we live. And, you have to plug these in. And, if you don't have electricity, then you're going to be stuck somewhere."
He says they're not reliable.
Yeah. So in his own way, he was, explaining why he wasn't going to buy one. So that was funny. And we do have electricity here. So he was just trying to explain it in his own way. And so anyway, we were all done that, and it really went well. We got hungry for lunch, and we had to leave because the lines were so long. So after we were done with the car show, we went and had a good lunch.
Well, that was good. And you guys had your hotel stay and another hotel tour, which was great. And and I stayed home. I went and stayed with my mom. And so I've been spending some more time with her, which has been nice. So I did that when you went to gymnastics too. Mm-hmm. So I think we talked last month with the update that my bone marrow biopsy came back with encouraging news that there was no additional cancers, and mine is under control. I just seem to have suppressed, bone marrow that won't produce white and red cells like it needs to. So my labs in November were still not very good. In fact, they went the wrong way. So I met with the oncologist, and he just suggested that I try an IVIG treatment, which is something new for me. But that I have really low IgG as well, which can affect your immune system. And so I had my first treatment yesterday. It was kind of similar to chemo in the way that they gave me the Benadryl concoction to make me all sleepy in case I had any allergic reactions. And it took several hours to administer it to me because you have to go at a really slow pace and gradually bump it up. But it was done, and I felt very tired yesterday. I did get a slight headache, but nothing that ibuprofen couldn't take care of, and I think I handled it really well. So it's morning here today, so I always do better in the mornings. So I said, let's do a podcast while I'm feeling okay in the morning, because I really haven't been feeling very well, especially the past week. It's been kind of rough. But anyway, so we're praying that this will work, and if it does, then this may be something that I can do monthly, because from all that I'm reading, it takes several months for you to get the optimal results. But we're hoping and praying that this will be something that my body will respond well to, and
that the insurance will cover.
And yeah, so then I have insurance that's going to be going into effect January 1st. And so, yeah, there is a prayer out there that that I will be able to get the treatment through the insurance. So we're just still in that take everything one day at a time, control what you can control, and
trust God.
Trust God. That's it. It's what we're doing. And, we were talking this morning a little bit because I was writing a Christmas letter to send out to our friends and family, just kind of recapping this crazy past year. And we were saying, just the importance of family and being more intentional with our time and not just letting the days fly by. And we didn't spend that quality time together that we need to. And that's what will happen if you don't intentionally slow down and put things on your calendar to spend quality time together. It won't happen. Other things will take the priority whether you want them to or not. So I know that's something that we've been working on this year, and that as we roll into 2026, we'll continue to fine tune that.
Yeah, I think the important thing is to keep it at the forefront of your mind, because like we were saying, if you just go day to day in your routine, breakfast, lunch, dinner, go to work, come home, go to sleep, you miss, important quality time with family.
Yeah. So I think like for us, some of the minor changes that we've made, and I think that's what you have to do, is kind of like take the baby steps. But one thing that we've done is you have an alarm that goes off at 9 p.m. now on your phone. And so then when we hear that, everybody stops, because we know that's the time that we all gather to the couch and we say a prayer together.
Yeah.
And that's been really good. I think we had started that last month because we had briefly mentioned it, but no, that's continuing, and it's been really, really good.
It really is.
And it's just that time where we stop and we come together and we pray together and we talk together. And then afterwards, we did it at 9:00 because we usually go to bed around 10 around here. So then, after that, you can go and do whatever else you want to do before it's time for bed. We don't go to sleep right after that. And I think that helps Bryce too, because I don't know, he has this thing about not wanting to end the day. And I think it's just because he enjoys life so much. Honestly, I think he just doesn't want to stop until he has to stop. He enjoys sleeping in, but he wants to stay up late, which I was wired the same way as a kid and as an adult for most of my life. So anyway, but we're talking about even like with us, we have to schedule dates or they won't happen. We have to put it on the calendar or it won't happen. So we do have Coach Shelley who comes and stays with Bryce one night every month. So we know we have at least that one date night. And then we have my mom who's definitely there and able to watch him for us. But again, we just have to block out that time or otherwise it just won't happen. And we were doing it every week and then we kind of slacked off on that. And then some of that's because I don't feel well in the evening. So we have to like time it out. But those are the kind of, I don't want to say excuses, but reasons, legitimate reasons, okay? I'm tired in the evening, so it's harder for me to go out. I can't go out in really busy public places, so we have to time that out to where if we make a plan, it's normally where we go out between 4 and 5 p.m. before restaurants get crowded, but right when they open. But you know what? We have to do that because if we don't, we won't have that quality time together. And so that's definitely a mind shift for us and something that we're recognizing that needs to even have more attention as we roll into the new year. So I have a book here that I wanted to review, and then we'll go to that question. And,
okay.
That'll be that. Okay, it's called Our Amazing Minds, Celebrating Differences and Sharing the Adventure of Autism. And it was written by Jeffrey and Laura May and illustrated by Anastasia Halianka. And so it's a really, really well written and beautifully illustrated book. It's a larger book, and it's about 4 different kiddos who are on the autism spectrum. And as we all know, there's some similarities and then there's a lot of differences. And so they each had their own personality and their own autism traits and differences in the way that, they process their information, but they all found ways to get along and develop their friendship. And I thought it was great, to read it with Bryce so that he could see also the differences in the kids. And it was a really, really sweet book. I think it's good for the kids that are in school, maybe older school age, I would say. And I would probably say, again, each kid is different, but I'm thinking for Bryce, he would probably click into this story when he was around 9 or 10 years old, when he started to notice, some differences in other children. But he accepts everybody for their differences, which is a beautiful thing. Mm-hmm. But he does notice, that there are some kids that talk more and some kids who talk less, and some who want to be touched and some who don't want to be touched. And, it just kind of hits on all those differences, but how we can all still get along and be there and help each other. And so I think reading this with your children, and whether you're a therapist, it would be a good book. If you're a parent, it would be a good book to have. If you're a school teacher, it would be a good book to have, to share with the kids. So I will share a link in the notes, and I want to thank Jeffrey and Laura for sending that to us so that we could read this and be able to share that with our audience.
Do you feel like that book would also benefit maybe kids at school if it was in their library? At the school library?
Yeah, actually, I do think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what I may do is, now that you said that, I may donate this to our local library too, so that they could have that.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I do think it's not just for the kids who have autism, but it's also very important for the children who don't have autism, so that they can recognize differences and be more accepting. And I think that's part of the end goal there, is creating that awareness and that acceptance.
Awesome.
Yep. All right. So we'll talk about your question you have there. And then I have one funny thing that Bryce said to us recently, and then we'll wrap up the show.
Okay. Sounds good. So as part of our, helpfulness for parents, I just wanted to start a series covering, what are some of the most common questions that parents have. And of course, the first one comes from parents that may or may not believe that their child has autism. So, I'm seeing reduced eye contact or repetitive play or a speech delay in my child. Does that mean he has autism? The overall question, does my kid have autism? Well, just because he has one of those things doesn't mean that he has autism. And let me start by saying I'm not a doctor. I just play one at home. That's our running joke. And
I should call you Doogie.
Yeah, right. So I'll go over some things that, could be other things other than autism if you're seeing some of these traits, and what to do if you're seeing some of these and want to get more information. So I'll start, with speech delay. So if your child has speech delay, does that mean my child has autism? Well, not necessarily. It's more if you put speech delay with reduced eye contact, with repetitive play, with hand flapping, with these other symptoms, then you can kind of put the puzzle together, if you will, and say, okay, maybe that's where I'm heading. What should I do then? So there's different causes of speech delay, and some of them are hearing issues, family history of late talkers, developmental language disorder, bilingual environments where your parents are speaking more than one language, motor speech challenges like apraxia, prematurity, or medical history. So in Bryce's case, Bryce had a brain hemorrhage when he was born. or if the child was born premature, that can cause a speech delay. So, there's a lot of things that can cause speech delay besides autism. So then we go to reduced eye contact. So lower than average eye contact can be caused by temperament. So they might be shy or slow to warm up to people. They could have just sensory differences, anxiety around new people, vision differences, personality differences. Some kids simply don't use eye contact very much. So consistently limited eye contact in many settings, especially paired with limited social response, can be a sign associated with autism, but never a diagnostic by itself. So it's putting these things together in a pattern. Repetitive play by itself doesn't mean your child has autism. Lining up toys, spinning objects, repeating actions. Many toddlers do that, and it can be a soothing part of learning for them. But things you want to look for are repetitive play that dominates all the playtime, like if they're just doing it constantly. Distress when their routine changes. If you get them out of a routine, your daily routine, and something comes up and you have to do something else, and then all of a sudden they're having a meltdown, and you don't know why. Limited pretend play by age 3+. So if they're not pretending, Bryce never. I don't know that he ever pretended play.
I would say he
Very
did
limited.
not pretend play, but he also didn't do any of the lining up.
Yeah.
And he also didn't have speech delay. He had speech regression where he lost his language.
Yeah.
So it's all very, and the eye contact when he was younger, he made very good eye contact all the time.
Yeah.
Very interactive, very chatty. And then the regression came.
So what truly matters is the pattern, not one specific behavior, right?
Yeah. And I want to say, I also think that, we're kind of limited to seeing it with boys because we have a son. Mm-hmm. But I think sometimes it's harder to diagnose autism in a girl because they mask differently than boys do. Mm-hmm. And they present differently unless it's pretty severe, if it's at level 3, that's different. But, level 2, level 1, it can get missed sometimes until they become adults, but definitely until they get older. And I think sometimes people don't get diagnosed early on because they don't have all of these very glaring symptoms like or traits like, delayed language or all of that. But I just think that if I'm listening to all of this, but I think it's really for those that the children are older and you're like, what's going on with my child? Why are they struggling in school? Why are they having these meltdowns? Because not being able to control your emotions, that's a lot of it too. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't really, it doesn't get any better as they get older. Then I would start asking the questions. And it's very hard sometimes to get an autism diagnosis, because it's not like you can do a blood test and it's somebody's opinion by seeing your child, and you see your child a lot more hours than this doctor is seeing your child or spending 2 hours with them.
Let me get to that.
Okay.
So what truly
Sorry, I don't
matters,
have your notes. So.
Yeah, what truly matters is a pattern, not just one behavior, right? So social communication, you might have limited shared attention. So not showing people things like, some kids will bring a toy over to show them, or they'll begin pointing, right? So if your child's not pointing, and Bryce never pointed.
He didn't. And I think the pointing and the showing you stuff is because they want to engage.
Yeah. And so the other things are not responding to their name, limited desire to interact or imitate, and then few gestures. So very limited gestures in waving, pointing, like reaching out to be picked up.
Right.
Bryce never did that. Like a lot of kids will lead their parents, like point or not point.
No,
but
he would
push
take us
them.
by our hand or
Yeah.
push us to get what he wanted.
Yes.
Yes. That is a sign.
Yeah. And then repetitive behaviors, sensory differences, like a strong need for sameness, intense focus on certain objects. Like if you have ceiling fans and they just sit there and stare at the ceiling fan. Repetitive motions like flapping and pacing. Sensory seeking or avoidance. So covering ears, smelling objects, watching things spin, like I just said with fans. So
Okay. I know you're wanting to just read everything, but I feel like I want to keep it a conversation too.
Yeah.
So I'm listening to that. So Bryce still smells things.
he'll
Often.
smell food.
Food is the
foods.
biggest thing,
Yeah.
but I see him smelling things, so it's a sensory thing. And we asked him the other day, "Why are you smelling that?" He goes, "I just want to know what it smells like." All right.
Yeah.
So I don't find myself smelling all kinds of things, but
Right.
also you're talking about watching ceiling fans. I also know that one thing is the autistic mind seems to focus on different things. So like on a car, most of the kids are going to be looking at the doors and the paint job and all that. Well, an autistic brain may be looking at the wheels and how they spin and how they work. And, it's just if you find that your child is focusing on different details than what you may be focusing on, that really could be a sign. And
Yeah.
we've talked about this before with Bryce when we used to go through the neighborhood and we would ask, he was very, he had
liked
like a
garage
love-hate
doors.
relationship with garage doors. He
Yeah.
wanted everybody's garage door to be up, and he would be upset if it went down.
So he would be focused on the garage door of the house whenever we would walk.
Right. So
And-
then we ask him, what color is the house? And he would tell us the color of the garage door, which wasn't what our answer would have been for the color of the house. And then we had to well, why is he
Yeah.
saying the house is brown when we're seeing a different color? And then we're like, oh, because he's focusing on the garage door.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like those kind of things that you may not recognize until like 2020 is hindsight, but those are the kind of clues that can help you when you're trying to just observe.
Yeah. So if several behaviors appear together, or they occur across different settings, or they significantly impact interaction or communication, then you might consider taking the next step. But it's perfectly typical if behaviors only appear in certain situations. Social interest is strong even with late speech. Play becomes more flexible over time, or there are clear alternative explanations like hearing issues, language delay, etc. So, you can get their hearing tested early on, and they don't need to be able to raise their hand when they hear the sound in order for somebody to determine if they can hear or not. So there's a hearing test that can be performed even when they're an infant. So just keep that in mind. And then, you can also have the vision checked, and they can, like with Bryce, they can check his vision without really him being able to tell them, what's going on. They have tools.
They do, but it definitely has been more insightful now that he can tell them what he can and cannot see, like his premium peripheral vision.
Yeah, right. So what's the next step if you think something's going on? So you schedule a developmental screening with your pediatrician, and hopefully they're aware of autism symptoms and traits, or a developmental pediatrician, or a child psychologist, or an early intervention team. So like in Florida, we have early steps, and they can come in and do evaluations. And also neurologists where we live oftentimes will give the diagnosis. So if your child has a neurologist, or your pediatrician may refer your child to a neurologist for the diagnosis, that type of thing. So Yeah, that's
So
kind of where you go.
So for early steps here, they will see children up until 3 years old. Their services are limited from 0 months to 3 years old, right? I think you have to go to a neurologist or somebody else if your child is over 3. But I think it's also important to point out that, you may, let's say your child has delayed language, because that's a pretty obvious one and concerning, right? Because you say, well, they're not quite saying words yet. I thought they would be. And maybe they're only like 18 months old. And then, you get them checked out and they're like, no, everything seems okay. I will tell you that at 18 months, there really weren't any clear signs that Bryce had autism.
Right.
And I became more concerned when he was 2. And then after 2, then I started seeing some behaviors, and then
The flapping started.
The flapping started. Then all of that kind of stuff. And then by 2.5, that's when they were, okay, we believe he has autism. And then it was like, okay, yeah, he does. Yeah. So then we started treating him for that and getting him into all the therapies. I would say that going in early is good, because it may give you some reassurances, and they say that. But if you go in early, but your gut is still telling you something's not right, and then you're starting to see some of these other things that, Chris has mentioned, don't be hesitant to go back and try again. Because, like I said, it's hard to get an autism diagnosis. I know moms who, they saw it in their children and they knew something wasn't right, but they were, in air quotes, high functioning, as we hear. And it took them until, they in their teens until they could get a diagnosis. So it's very tricky.
Autism seems to come in 2 forms, 2 flavors. One flavor is the child has it from birth, right? So they can look at babies and they can actually determine from the gaze of the baby, their eye movements, if the baby is likely to have autism. And then other kids, they develop it like Bryce did a little later on, where they had language, they were interacting, and then all of a sudden there was a switch that flipped, and then you have what they call regression. So then he lost his language. Like we felt like we lost Bryce.
Right.
That was our feeling, like we lost our child.
Yeah.
And it was heartbreaking. It really was, for us and for him. And so definitely, I mean, if you see a combination of things going on, the earlier you can get intervention, the better. To get services, all of those things put together, along with seeing a doctor that specializes in autism, is the way to go. That's like the complete package.
It is. And our nephew, and he's older, it's like he's going to be 27 this year, but he had delayed language, and he really wasn't saying anything, and he was, over 2 at that point, and we're like, what is wrong? And then he didn't respond to his name, so I said, well, go behind him and like bang a pan and see if he turns his head, But he heard that noise. So it was like, okay, he can hear. He's just like, he was so in his own land, he just didn't even respond to his name. And then someone had told me about a doctor that was about an hour away from us, and that his son had autism. And so I told my brother and his wife, like, maybe you should take him to go there. I'm not saying this is what he has, but it's just there's some similar signs there. And so when they went, sure enough, that's what it was. And his was very much diet related, and they had a lot of the heavy metals in him, and they had to like really just detox him. It was crazy. And then he went on a really strict gluten-free, dairy-free diet to get his gut back into balance, and give him supplements. And, again, this was when the increase of autism diagnosis was just starting to go up, and it was before we had all the resources on the internet like we do now. And I mean, to be where we are now and have these children, and there's all these therapists that are available, and so many books and resources, and even podcasts like ours, and other people who are able to share. I mean, I think that's tremendous to help these families who are just getting started on their journey, or even these parents who missed it because they didn't have those resources, and they're like, oh, that's what's going on with my child. I didn't realize that, right?
Yeah.
That's why they're having the struggles in school. And then you throw in an additional diagnosis like ADHD with the autism. Yeah. Our nephew doesn't have the ADHD, so he didn't have the issues in school with focus like Bryce does. But Bryce, he requires breaks. That's why he needed to break at the car show. His little brain was probably taking all that in. Yeah. He needed a break to kind of overload and balance, and then he could go back and do more, So.
Yeah, I remember when we got the diagnosis, it was like, yes, we think your son might have autism or whatever, and then
it caught me off guard.
The rest of the conversation is just like the Charlie Brown teacher, wah, 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 while you're sitting there thinking, autism, what is autism? I never heard of autism. What can we do? Blah, 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 and it's a whirlwind when you get the diagnosis, and you go in, your brain goes into overdrive, and so it's...
And I know there's some people that don't want that diagnosis because they don't want that label on their child. But to me, it's like you would want to know what it is that you need to treat.
So you can help them.
So you can help the child. Yeah. It wasn't great for me to hear that I had cancer, and yet in one way it was like, well, thank God, at least now I know why I'm not feeling well. And so now we know how to treat me.
Right.
It's the same thing when it's neurological, or,
Yeah.
So it's one of those things that it's not the membership you would sign up for by choice, right? Mm-hmm. But once you are a member, I can't imagine life being any other way. And
he's been such
we've
a
embraced it.
Oh,
yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
It's just,
and just even our autism community and the parents and the families, and, it's our world. It's where we've been chosen to be, and we've embraced it. And that's why we kind of try to pay it forward and help other families by doing this podcast.
All right, let's hear some funnies.
Okay, so sometimes I know these funnies are funnier for me and you because
I know we're there
with Bryce, but I will do my best to try to explain this one. So this has just happened like in the past 2 weeks. We're going outside to drive to somewhere. I'm probably going to Mom's, and Bryce, we're just like one street over in our vehicle, and Bryce just all of a sudden goes, "Wow, it's so ultra realistic out here." And I was like, "What do you mean?" And he goes, "It's better than 4K." Then we just started laughing, like, where is this coming from, right? Because he was like so excited. He's like, "Oh, it's ultra realistic out here." He's like looking around and looking outside, and
I mentioned, I was like, he's like, I saw him in the back seat looking around, and he wasn't on his tablet.
Right.
And I was like, we started talking, and I said, "Isn't, God's creation beautiful?"
Did you say that first?
Yeah, it was like, because he was looking at, he's like, all the trees, and and all
he said it's ultra realistic. It's better than 4K. That was his line. And then I just started laughing. Yeah. So then I'm like, "So what do you mean it's better than 4K? And he goes, "Well, it's like 16K.
The resolution.
What does that mean? And he goes, "Well, the plants are like realistic." And I'm like, "Okay." And then he said, "Plants on Roblox, they don't even move."
Yeah. It's comparing outside with Roblox.
It was almost like, whoa, like it's so colorful and plants are moving because he's out in the real world compared to looking at his Roblox world where the plants don't even move. Yeah. So I just had to jot that down because I'm like, that's it. And that's why it's so important to get the kids outside and playing.
Yeah, it's not like he hasn't seen it before, but I think maybe because he just finished playing his game,
I guess so.
He noticed the difference.
He did. So, take your kids out into the 4K world or the 16K.
Right.
So that's our encouragement for the day. So anyway.
Well, thanks for listening, everybody, and we'll be back in touch as soon as we're able.
Yep, and it's probably a real possibility that we won't be back on here before Christmas. So let us just say Merry Christmas to each of you, and we are wishing you a Happy New Year, and we will be back soon.
2026.
2026.
Bye.
Bye.